Welcome to the Bible blog. And last time we looked at Genesis chapter 12. This time we're going to look at Genesis chapter 13. I had a very close friend who was a little disappointed that I switched from typing out the blogs to using a recorder or recording the blogs. But there are some advantages to this because I'll be able to show you some maps and some other stuff that is difficult to include in the written blog, although it's possible. Anyway, my old fingers don't type like they used to, and it was difficult for me to express what I wanted to say in words. It's a lot easier for me to do it with my voice. So I switched it over. I hope folks don't mind too much, and I hope that it's still a blessing to you. And and by the way, you should have your Bible out so you can follow along in Genesis chapter 13. And if you don't have a Bible, right next to this video, there's a link to BibleGateway.com. And you just type in Genesis 13 in their little search bar, and it'll bring up the New King James Version, which is what I'm using for this. So anyway, I hope that it turns out to be a blessing, and we'll get started. Now, when we left chapter 12, Abram had told the Pharaoh in Egypt that Sarai was his sister, because he was afraid that they would kill him to get his wife. And so the Pharaoh gave him all kind of she went to live in the house of the Pharaoh, and he gave Abram all kinds of gifts for her and so forth, and then found out that she was his wife. So Pharaoh got real upset and told him to leave, and he had his men carry him out with all of his possessions. So now Abram is going to head north, and verse 1 of chapter 13, then Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, to the south. Now that's a little bit confusing because he went up to the south, but if you know that he was in Egypt, and then he went north, and he entered the southern part of the land of Canaan, which is now Israel. And so he was in the southern part, and so that's why it looks a little confusing, because he went to the south. And also his nephew, Lot, went with him. He went from a very pleasant place, which was Egypt, to now a desert place. And of course there had been a famine, and that's why he went down to Egypt. So apparently now the famine is pretty much finished. And verse 2, Abram was very rich in livestock and in silver and gold. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. So if you've been following along, he came from up at Haran, and came south from up at the north end of what would be Israel, and he stopped at a place between Ai and Bethel and built an altar to the Lord. So now he's headed back up there, and he goes to the same place. And verse 4, to the place of the altar which he had made there at first, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. So that was a good thing, because he'd been down in Egypt, and Egypt is a type of the world, and he may have felt like he needed to cleanse his soul and get himself right with the Lord again, after going down and making the Pharaoh mad by lying to him and so forth. So he go ahead, and he goes and he worshiped the Lord, and probably asked forgiveness. Verse 5, Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. So here's Lot. His possessions have grown over the years, and so verse 6: Now the land was not able to support them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. Now remember this also, that Lot had grown up watching Abram do the things that he had done. And so if you're very wise, which probably Lot wasn't a fool, you see these things going on, and you see how your uncle does it, so then you learn to do it, and you become wealthy. He also learned some things that probably weren't too good, and that was he was watching his uncle tell lies and so forth. So we have to be careful with our nephews and nieces and kids and our grandkids to be sure and set a good example, because they do copy, and you probably already are aware of that. And so it's just a good idea to live a life that pleases the Lord, and that is always pleasing the Lord. Okay, so they both had great possessions, and now verse 7 of chapter 13. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and the Perizzites then dwelt in the land. So Lot and Abram were getting along just fine, but because they had so many possessions, their employees were fighting with each other. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the same area, and so they were seeing this going on. And so verse 8, Abram said to Lot, you notice he starts out with please. Lot didn't say this. Abram said this: please, let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. And so Abram is trying to settle things. In verse 9 he says, is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, then I will go to the right. Or if you go to the right, then I will go to the left. So Abram's intention was that Lot would be in the land that God had promised them to send them to, and that was the land of Canaan, which is everything from the Mediterranean Sea over to the Jordan River, and for about 250-mile stretch there. And so it's a very small country, but anyway, there was plenty of land. And so Abram said, is not the whole land before you? So he was talking about the land that was going to become Israel. And he said, you go whatever, you pick which way you want to go, and I will go the way that you leave. So in other words, north, south, east, west, or whatever. Now Lot, verse 10, Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, or in other words, the Garden of Eden, like the land of Egypt. So it was a very good place, just like Egypt. And he says, as you go towards Zoar. So now Zoar is on the east side of the Jordan River, and that plain out there was not really the part. It was not supposed to be part of the land that God had told that was the land of Canaan. But Lot, see, they were on a mountain or up in a hill area, and Lot lifted up his eyes and he looked out. He didn't look at the land God had given him. He looked out across the Jordan to this beautiful country over there. And we have to be careful, because Lot doesn't know it at this point in time, but his carnal desires are going to cause him a lot of grief. If we take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 18, 2 Corinthians 4:18, it says, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And so he was looking at the temporary things, and it was beautiful land. And also in Colossians chapter 3, verse 2, it reminds us to set our mind on things above and not on the things of the earth. But that's not what Lot was doing. He was looking out there, and he was seeing something that was really a nice place to live. Something that nobody would there's not a person who wouldn't want to live there, I'll put it that way. And that's the problem. If there's something that appeals to everybody, everybody's going to go to that point, and like a magnet. And so it's typical in life. Anything that if you have something that's available free, you're going to draw the people who are always looking for free things. You're not going to draw people who have character that look for things that you need to work for. And if you have, like in this particular case, it was easy farming land. And we're also going to see that after Lot got there, that there are going to be some other countries, kings from other countries, that are going to come in and want to take that land away from him. So it was not a good choice, but he didn't know it at that time. He was just going on his feelings. And so he lifted up his eyes, and he looked out to the plain of Jordan. In verse 11, then Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. And the key words here are Lot chose for himself. That's who he was thinking about. Now his uncle had raised him. His uncle had taught him everything. And it would be nice if Lot would have said, "No, you go first. You decide what you want to choose, and then I'll take it." But Lot wasn't like that. Lot was very carnally minded. So anyway, so verse 12. So he separated himself, went east, and then verse 12 says, Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. Okay, so he left the promised land, or what was going to become the promised land, God's choice for him to live, and he went into a worldly area. Verse 13, but the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. And it's interesting that those words are in there. They were sinful against the Lord. It's as if they knew they were sinning against the Lord. They knew what was right and they knew what was wrong. And I'm sure that that's why God became so angry at that situation and destroyed it. There's a lot of people who don't know, they don't know anything about what the Lord expects. And they sin, but they're not sinning against the Lord. They're just sinning because it's fun to sin and they're enjoying the sin. But when a Christian chooses to sin, knowing that it's wrong, that's called a transgression. Transgression is a little different than a sin. He's transgressing a line that he knows is there, and that will make the Lord very angry. He's forgiving, but you're stepping over a line that's going to cause you to lose some blessings if you don't get right with the Lord. So verse 13, we said that already. Verse 14, and the Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated from him. So now Lot's gone. Now the Lord's going to talk to Abram. He says, lift up your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see, I give you, and your descendants forever. So that area west of the Jordan and over to the Mediterranean Sea, God gave it to the children of Abram, or the descendants of Abram. And he says all of it, and then he says, I give it to you. So it was a gift. God said, this is going to be yours, and I'm the one who's given it to you. Okay? And so verse 16, he says, and I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants also could be numbered. And he says, as the dust of the earth. Now, if you've ever been out on a dusty field a farm field that's dry, and you walk in it and the dust kicks up, that's just where you're standing, and there's dust everywhere. So you can't number the dust. There's too much of it. But God says it's as the numbers as you. If you could number the dust, you could number the children of Israel. But you can't number the dust. And the children of the Jewish people were going to be. There's going to be a lot of them. Okay. Verse 17. So then he says, "Arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you." Then Abram moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and he built an altar there to the Lord. So God said, get up, don't just sit there, get up and move around and explore this land. And of course Abram was a godly man, and it says he moved his tent. So his first move was to go from the little place between Bethel and Ai, excuse me, to a place that had terebinth trees, and I have gotten pictures off the internet of what a terebinth tree is. They have a lot of shade. They spread out and just provide a lot of shade, and it's a place called Mamre. Now Mamre is up in the hills just west of the Dead Sea. So he didn't move a long ways. He moved a little south and a little east from where he was, and he could look out over the Dead Sea most likely from where he was. And then he built an altar there, and so he could worship the Lord. And so that's chapter 13. And chapter 13 pretty much just tells us about the two different men, one named Abram who loved the Lord, and one named Lot who loved the world. And in future chapters we'll be able to see that which one prospers the most, and you can probably guess anyway. And it's the same thing today. Things aren't any different than they ever were. Those people who love the world, they enjoy it, but it's only temporary, and it won't last, and they will die, and they will not be able to go to heaven. They'll have to burn forever in hell. But if a person puts their trust in Jesus, asks him to be their Savior, turns their life over to him, and just gives themselves to him, they're giving up these things that are around us that we can see. But they're gaining the things which are not seen, and the things that are not seen are eternal. So if you haven't done that, I trust that you'll take time to just bow your head and ask the Lord to come into your heart and to be your Savior. And if you have done it, be sure and don't tell lies like Abram did. Live a life that pleases the Lord. So thank you for visiting, and I hope that you'll come back and listen to the next blog on Mr. Kent's Bible blog. God bless you.